Hey everyone, Matthew Fudge from Cradle here. Today I want to talk to you about our new series of instruments called state machines. I have 3 state machines loaded up in Logic, so let's dive in and take a look at them right now. The first one I have loaded up here is called Low End. Low End is all about bass. Faded Keys is our next one, and that's a new take on nostalgic keyboard sounds. And the third one is Slow Drift. And Slow Drift is all about ethereal and abstract pads. You can see that all 3 of them have a slightly different look when you load them up, and this is called the home page. The home page lets you access all of the features and controls that you're going to want to get results quick. So you can see that they're very similar on all 3, but there are some slight differences. So I'll start on low end and work through all 3 of them and talk about what some of those are. The first one you're going to see are the presets. So this one has loaded up with one called 80s Movie. And if I click this next button, I can hear the next preset, which is called Brass Showers. And all of these presets that I'm currently playing belong in this category called Acoustic. And if I click this button, I can go to a different category. This one's Analog. So each of these buttons allow me to explore different categories. And the categories are different slightly for each of the different state machines. So I go to Faded Keys, we can see that we now have a slightly different set of categories, and same thing with Slow Drift. We go here, slightly different again. Now what's unique, or what's similar about each of them, is that they all have a favorite button. So this favorite button allows me to see my list of favorite presets for each of the instruments. And the favorite presets can be set easily by clicking the name of the preset. And when I go here, I can see this list of all the presets that I favorited. If I go in and click Acoustic, same thing. But now I see some have the heart icon and some don't. If I click this, this now gets added to the favorite list. We can see it here. And we can also do this while browsing through and just click the heart icon up here. So this is the preset browser, and you'll see this on some other pages as well too, but this is basically where you're going to want to go immediately when you want to hear all the different sounds that are loaded up inside of the state machine. The next one below there is the A-B blend. So we can see on this preset, I have 2 different sounds, muted hammers and lickin' EP. And if I set this in the middle, we can hear a blend of both of those. And as I go to the left, I'll only hear A. And as I go to the right, I'll only hear B. And the blend of these are slightly different depending on whatever preset you have loaded up. You can see as I go through each preset, the name of the sounds that are loaded there are all subtly different. Below here, we have the Midi FX and the audio effects. Each of these have a power button, so you can easily disable them. We can hear in this preset right now that there's some movement happening automatically by itself. And this has to do with the Midi effects. If I hit the power button, this will stop right away. Along with this, I also have a lock button. And what this lets me do is if I find a setup that I really like maybe this set of Midi effects, I can click the lock button, and whenever I select another preset, these Midi effects will come over to the next preset. And the same can happen below with the audio effects. So the audio effects are unique for each of the 3 state machines. And I can just easily disable them. Or I can turn them all on and adjust them really quickly from here. So without really knowing too much about all the effects or what's under the hood or all the individual parameters, I can go ahead and change them really quickly. For example, if I want to add more delay to this preset, it's really easy to do that just by enabling it and then turning the volume up. Same with the reverb or the phaser. And now with just a few tweaks, you can see that this preset sounds totally different than where we started. And once I find something that I like, I can again just lock these and then select different presets. So this is a really quick and easy way to access all the powerful features that are inside of a state machine without going too deep. But later on in the video, we'll go through all the different layers and levels of what's available and show exactly how you can get deeper and go under the hood when you do want to. The last area to look at here on this homepage is the output. This might seem really simple. Yeah, it's an output slider, but we also have this feeding into a limiter. And this is really great for when you want to play a sound and you want to make sure that it doesn't clip. So if I play this preset back, and maybe it gets really loud, we can see there that the limiter keeps it from overloading. And this one got pretty loud when I boosted this EQ. And the gain reduction is being shown here. So the limiter really just allows you to keep everything under control. If you really start to get out of hand with the effects, you don't really have to worry that anything is going to be too loud or cause problems. So this is the homepage. Homepage is where you're going to want to go for step 1 to hear what a state machine is all about. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at the synth page and get deeper into some sound design. So moving on from the homepage, the next section I want to talk about is the synth page. And this is where you're going to find more traditional controls that you would find on a synth. And some of the sections have been brought over, including the preset browser up on the top, and this A and B browser that we talked about previously. So just to refresh on this again, the A and B browser let you browse between 2 different sound sources. In this preset, I have in my A side what's called a drifting EP. And on my right side, in B, is nostalgia keys. And you can hear those are 2 very different sounds, and this knob lets me set the level between them. Just to talk about the rest of the section, I'm going to go all the way on the B side and select this for editing. So when I hit select, this determines what I'm editing in the controls below. So I can either edit the A side separately, the B side separately, or I can link both of them together and edit them together. And I'll show a little bit of both. But again, I'm going to start just by selecting the B side and going below. And the first section here is LFO, which stands for low frequency oscillator. And if you've ever seen a synth before, you've probably seen an LFO. And this allows you to automatically move a control back and forth. And there's 4 different parameters that we can move or modulate with the LFO: the amp, the pan, vibrato, and the filter. So I'll start by turning up the amp, and you'll hear this effect pretty obviously. Right, so now we can hear that a volume is turning up and down at a certain speed. And if I turn up the speed knob, you'll hear that increase. And that's because the speed knob is now set to be free running or unsynchronized, which means it's not moving to the speed of the tempo in my project in Logic. But if I turn on the sync button, now turning this up is going to slow things down, and then turning it down will make it go faster in synchronized rates to my tempo. So if I want it to move at exactly an 1/8 note, and likewise, I could do that all the way up to a whole note, or go down to a triplet 30-second note. The next section I want to take a look at is the pan here. So if I turn up this parameter, and you're wearing headphones, you'll now hear that the sound is moving back and forth between the left and right speaker. Vibrato is similar, and that'll change the pitch. This is great for those seasick kind of lo-fi sounds. And filter will change the cutoff filter, which is found here. And right now, this is moving in what's called a triangle shape. That means that it slopes up and then slopes down in the shape of a triangle. We can find that right here. And there's a few other shapes in here, like a sawtooth, which ramps up and then has a hard drop. There's square, which will be basically on or off. And then there's random. And you can hear, yeah, you can really start to add a lot of modulation and movement to the sound just by using this. You can also see that if I double click into these parameters, they go back to default. So I'll turn them all off as we move through these sections. The next one I want to take a look at is source. So source, there's 3 different playback modes, and the first one is mono, which means now if I play multiple notes, it means that it's monophonic and only one sound is playing at a time. Legato is very similar, where there's still only one note playing at a time, but instead of each note cutting off the previous note, it actually glides the note up to the next note played. And this glide time can specifically be set to using this glide parameter down below. Almost sounds like the notes are like skating on ice when you do this. And polyphonic means that just all of the notes will play together in the way you'd kind of expect. This is similar to like what would happen on a piano. And still, that glide parameter works with polyphonic mode as well. You would see this on some synths called polyphonic portamento and can create this great kind of like glidey chord sound. Above this glide section, there's also the noise. And this lets you blend in some noise into the sound. A noise oscillator is something you'd find on a lot of classic synths. The Juno might be maybe one of the most famous ones for that. It had a noise oscillator, so you could kind of brighten up your sound just by adding this in. And the noise is before the filter, which we'll talk about next, which means you can also tame it back a bit if it gets to be a bit too much. There's also a few tuning options here, like the ability to transpose the notes or just detune. And detuning can be really helpful if you want to blend the two sounds like layer A and layer B together and make a bit more of a lush chorusy sound. We'll get into that in a second, and I'll show you what I mean. The next section here is filter. So there's 2 different types of filters. There's low pass and high pass. And this is a filter that's used for either cutting the high frequencies out or cutting the low frequencies out. And I'll just play a note here and you'll see what I mean. I'll turn up this noise as well too to help demonstrate. Right? Everyone's heard that sound before. And the resonance adds a bit of a peak or character at the cutoff frequency. So this will make the cutoff more pronounced and sound more synthetic. You can see as I turn that up, almost get a bit of a whistling sound, which is really cool, definitely when you want it. Or totally turn it off. This envelope amount here lets me open or close the filter automatically based on an envelope, or ADSR if you've heard of that. So this will, let me do things like have a pluck sound with the filter. Definitely very useful for shaping the sound, and one of my favorite ways of getting a lot of mileage out of a synth like this. Just show you a couple different sounds you can pull off with this. Here's turning up the attack. Even with the resonance turned up, this is great. Very classic. And adding a bit of sustain and release. And these, pretty common on most synths, and you can easily hear what this will. So now I've taken that key sound I started with, and now it's more of a pad. So a lot of sound shaping possibilities can be done just with this section here. Let me zero some of this out again. And when the envelope amount is set to 0, you won't hear this. It won't make any change. And I can turn all this off and take my noise off, and I'm back to where I started. On the amp section, this lets me set a few different things related to the volume mostly. So the first one is velocity. So right now my velocity is set to 50%. And what this means is that as I play the key harder, it will make the sound louder. Now And 50% is more on the subtle side. If I turn this up to 100, that's a lot more noticeable. And if I don't want this to happen, I can just simply turn it off or get half of that with 50%. And then we have the ability to pan. And yeah, panning, definitely helpful. We've probably all seen panning before, but it gets especially useful when we get into the 2 layers. The last section here too also is the ADSR for the amp. And this is similar to the filter, but this is separate. The ADSR for the filter is opening and closing the filter. This is the overall volume for the whole sample. And this is especially noticeable turning up the release and the attack. And as I turn up the attack and the release, this now becomes almost like a pad sound. And if I turn these off again, I'm back to my clicky key sound. Some of the tricks I kind of alluded to earlier, setting the blend back to 50%, we can see we've got both these sounds here again, which are awesome because we've got this drifting EP, which has a bit of a hard attack. It's very sudden. It comes in a bit harder. And then this nostalgia key, it's a bit on the softer side. But yeah, maybe it could be softer. Maybe that would help because right now, both of them are coming in kind of hard right at the beginning. So if I soften up the nostalgia keys, this gives more space for the drifting EP and they're not fighting each other at the very beginning. And then also with that, maybe I think, oh, I really like where that's going, but I'd like those nostalgia keys to stick around for a little bit longer. So if I turn the release up on those, I get a bit more of that, almost like it's a reverb sound going on. And this is, again, another great way as well, too, to maybe bring in the LFO. So if I want to increase the vibrato, maybe in a negative direction, so it goes out of tune, like it goes flat. You can hear that happening there. And again, we can also now select the A layer and do a bit of changes here. So maybe I want to turn the noise up to make that really cut and brighter. Maybe I want this drifting EP sound to kind of cut out now to make more space for the nostalgia keys. I can turn the sustain down and the decay a bit, and we can just solo up A. Right, so now I have this bright little attack at the beginning and blend those together. And just get the balance just right on them. And maybe I also want to have this drifting EP higher in pitch compared to the nostalgia keys. I can turn the transpose up to 12, which is 1 octave. So you can see, this is the kind of thing you get lost in very quickly. And this has been designed to be really quick and intuitive to use. So, it has all the controls you need without being too overwhelming or unnecessarily complex. You get lost for a very long time in here. There's a lot you can explore. One of the best things about it as well, too, is that all of the instruments, all the 3 state machines, have over 100 sound sources. So this means that if you load up a setting that you like, or you create something like that's really interesting, all you have to do is simply change to a different sound source. And it totally transforms the sound. So each of these A and B layers have their own sound source where I can click through here and I can filter and find something very specific to what I'm looking for. So if I want something bright and sustained or bright and decayed, I can find that. And then maybe in that case, I don't need to turn the noise up or as much. I can find a sound source that gets me closer to where I'm going without having to do too much synthesis. So yeah, a lot you can explore here, a lot you can do. And as I go and change the sound source, I still have all those synthesis settings in place. So the wobbliness of that B layer is still in place, and the kind of bright attack of the A layer is still there too. So now I can easily make something brand new. And this is a really cool sound. I actually really like this already. So why don't I save it as a preset as well while I'm here? I can click the save icon and come up with a new name for this. And what should I call it? Wobbly and bright. Yeah, that works. So I click save, and now I have a new user category pop up. And when I press this, I can see all of my own user presets. So and this is in combination with all the factory presets. So even though this comes with 190 presets right away, there's really no limit to how many presets you can make. So yeah, go wild. Let's talk about the MIDI effects. So if you remember, we saw the MIDI effects on the main page here. And we can get to these really easily by going to the ARP. The ARP section always has MIDI effects on. And these are all controlled right here. If I hit the power button, they'll all go off and you'll hear that ARP or sequence movement stops. So there's 3 different MIDI effects. There's scale, chord, and arpeggiator. You can get to most of what you need from the home page, but when you want to go deeper, there is a whole MIDI effects section. You can either click the MIDI effects button in the navigation bar, or you can just simply click with the name of the effect. Both will get you there. Let's dive in a little deeper and take a look at this preset Diamond Runner. So already we can see the chord effect is turned on and the arpeggiator is turned on. Let's turn off both and build this back up from scratch. Okay, sounds nice. It's a key sound. Let's go ahead and turn scale on. So scale is great for anyone who could only ever play the white keys on a keyboard, or anyone who just wanted some new inspiration and try something different. What this does is it causes everything you play to be fixed to a specific scale. So there's a control for the root note and the type of scale that you'd like. I like the harmonic minor. That's a great scale. So let's try that in something like D sharp. Okay. And then if I turn that effect off, that's my usual C scale. And now it's something totally different. Let's bypass that now and take a look at the chord section. So the chord section allows you to lock a very specific chord to each note you play. And I think a great way to show this is with a drum pad. So drum pads are great. They're very percussive, very fun to play. But they're really great at playing single notes. So if I play any drum pad now, it's going to automatically play a chord for me. Right now it's set to perfect fifth, which is a power chord if you're used to guitar, and you'll hear that. And there's a few different options in here. I can also do like major chords and get it kind of like a dance thing going. Yeah, lots of fun stuff to explore. Let's try a few more. Minor sevenths are good. Yeah, very percussive, and yeah, a very specific character to it when you do that. You can also go ahead and change the voice count, which you'll hear is the number of notes that are in the chord. So I can go from having, a simple kind of like 3 to 4 note chord to something a whole lot more. We also have position, which changes the position of like the notes, which octave they're falling in, and then the spread. So very easy to make complex things, and I can even drop this down another couple octaves. Yeah, and this is very fun. I especially really like this for getting out of patterns, like throwing into suspended seconds and just moving a couple knobs and seeing what happens. Another great option for this is just using octaves. And this is great going back to keys again. Turning up something like voice. So a lot to explore in the scale and chord section. Very experimental, very fun. Honestly, you'll find so many good uses of this through the ARP and other preset categories. This can be used in so many creative ways. Definitely worth exploring. My favorite MIDI effect, though, probably has to be the arpeggiator. As soon as I turn this on, you'll hear exactly what it's doing. Right? It's moving the sound and arpeggiating it. Instead of playing a chord all at once, it's playing multiple notes. And this is really great when used in combination with the chord or the scale. You can see what happens if I disable the chord. It's just moving a single note. And as soon as I turn this on, it's moving all the notes within what's a suspended fourth. And this is, so much fun. And again, another great one I really like here in the chords is the perfect fourth. This is great for playing chords in, and you can immediately start making everything feeling very jazzy and very much like it's being a seventh if I just play normal kind of triads like 1, 3, 5 stuff. So that's pretty far out there. You can hear that some of those notes are going up really high, and this is determined by the octave amount. So if I start turning this down, a whole lot of fun. And with the perfect fourths off again, this is me just playing the very simple kind of triad chord. And with the chords and perfect fourths, so it becomes really easy to make these complex chords just by experimenting with some of the different chord modes that are available. And like I mentioned previously, I can enable the lock from here and lock the MIDI effects and start going through the different categories and seeing what combinations I can get. Really fun. And this is cool. This feels very slow now. This is set to a 1/16th note, and I can go ahead and change this to something much faster, much slower. I can also change the amount of steps. Right now it was 16. I can set this to something even like 3. I can add some swing to it, especially on a 16th note. That'll be cool. Maybe turn up the steps a bit more. And turn the gate down. And the gate determines how long the note is held for. Yeah, so very easy to end up with some interesting results. And again, I can just keep tweaking the MIDI effects, having lock enabled, and going through presets. I really like looking at this way of sound design and production as almost like working with Lego blocks as a kid. So much fun to just put things together and fit them in new and interesting ways. And this is what this reminds me of. It's really easy to just, focus in on one part and then start going through the, preset library and seeing how things connect in different ways. And, and sometimes you get real surprises, like, how does this sound on pads? Yeah, it's interesting, and if it isn't quite what you're looking for, and pretty interesting. So much to kind of say and explore with this. All right, so now moving on, let's take a look at the audio effects. So the audio effects for all three instruments are slightly different. Some of them are similar and others are totally unique to that specific one. So let's start with low end. and we'll go to the audio effects section. And again, this is a mirror of what you find on the home page. And I can get to it in the exact same way as the MIDI effects. Simply clicking the name of the effect will bring me to this page. So a lot to see here. And one of the cool things with the audio effects section too is this very simple but often overlooked feature to just be able to turn all the effects off. So you can hear what your preset sounds like before and after. Pretty drastic, really. It's pretty gnarly sounding with all those effects on. Let's go through a few of these presets and take a listen. You know, you can hear the preset still sounds really good without the effects. But the effects definitely take it over the edge too, which is awesome. And just like the MIDI effects, we can also lock these. So if I come up with a chain that I really like this one, I can simply lock it and then go to the next preset, and this will stay the same. That's really cool. Let's take a look at the individual effects that are available here in low end. So let's turn them all off and turn them on one by one. The first one is the bass comp. This lets you really rein in the bass frequencies specifically. Because one of the things to know about making your sounds loud and punchy is to be able to get all the frequencies under control. And bass especially can suck up a lot of energy in a mix. So the bass compressor allows you to really rein in those low frequencies. And you can see the gain here and the threshold really determine when and where that's happening. There we go. So you can go from just a little bit of it to a whole lot. And gain knob up top really helps control that too. The next one is the mid driver. So this especially takes those mid frequencies, above the frequency that have been compressed, and really distorts them. This main white knob here is the master wet dry for this. You hear this can get pretty crazy. It also has 6 different modes, which go from, number 1, which is more on the subtle side, to something like number 4, which feels kind of like your face is being ripped off in a cool way. And again, you can easily just blend in just a touch of this to kind of get things right. The Bit Crusher is one of my favorites. There's so many interesting controls on this. We have the bit depth, which determines, how many bits you've actually got to crush. And then this jitter control, which starts modulating and moving some of the frequencies. It creates this very crispy kind of sound in the high end. It's great for adding a bit of air to a sound. And this filter, which can be before or after the Bit Crusher. So you can hear that if I filter this sound for the Bit Crusher, I'm kind of left with just the crushy coolness of it. But if I have it post, all of that kind of grittiness gets covered over in the filter. So it offers a lot of options. And again, once you start blending the wet and dry in there, really changes things drastically. And what I like about this is it can obviously be super extreme and really noticeable, or it can be more on the subtle side. Turning on chorus here, I really like the chorus that we've got in this. There's a very classic chorus that also had 4 different modes. This pays a bit of an homage to that. Great on bass. And there's a stereo width down here for it too. Stereo width on chorus is awesome, but sometimes mono chorus is also very cool. If you've ever run a bass through a mono chorus pedal, that's mono chorus. And then reverb. And what's really cool about all 3 of these state machines is that we have 4 different reverb modes, and those reverb modes have been tweaked very specifically for the type of sounds that they're creating. So these 4 reverb modes are really great specifically for bass. Everything from a really nice tight room to number 4 on all these tends to be one of my favorites, the kind of wet and wild version. And here there's a lot of modulation and distortion in the tails on that. There's a lot going on under the hood. And 4 is especially great for kind of long decayed sound. You know, if you want to make some nice ambient bass, this will do it. And the tone control is great for kind of smoothing that out. You know, once you've made this setup of effects just the way you want it, it's so handy to be able to just turn it off. Here before and after. Totally different. Again, if you really like this, it's really easy to save this. So I'm taking this preset called Bright Gush. Let's call it Dirtier Gush. You know, love making presets for this. So let's move on now to faded keys and take a look at the effects section there. Let's go ahead and turn on the EQ. Here, this lets you add just a little bit of brightness or do some things to the mids. I really like 3-band EQs. You know, if you've ever run sounds through a guitar amp, 3-band EQ. So really cool to have this. And the main EQ here is a tilt towards the highs or the lows. Got another bit crusher here, like previously, same one we had in low end, but tuned slightly differently for keys. And this time we've also got a phaser. I mean, keys and phasers, right? Two good things that go together. What I really love about effects too is just how it can inspire you to play different parts. Like, I feel like this is a totally different instrument now than when we started. You know, it feels very like an EP, very like smooth, very classic. And this is a lot more psychedelic and kind of out there. Very bright and very wide. So the phaser, this basically takes different frequencies and puts them in and out of phase with each other to make them sound very wide. We have a delay section next. I love this delay. This is, I would say, a model of a BBD, but taken in a totally different direction. So it can do the classic BBD thing, or it can get really gnarly. So yeah, there's a lot of like bright kind of grunge that can be had with this too. So this is what this tone high cut control will do. It filters out the high end like you'd have in a BBD, Bucket Brigade delay chip. And like you'd expect, you can also tempo sync this as well too. So if you want to have your delay sync to your tempo, it's very easy to do that. And then we have the reverb here. So again, very similar to what we saw in low end, but this reverb has been tuned specifically for keys. Totally different sound. And if we compare this to where we started, where we are, so different. And again, we've got this filter down here on the bit crusher. Totally different. Just one tweak on that. So yeah, a lot can be done. And I like this. I like the changes we've made to Wobbly and Bright. So let's go ahead and save this. And we'll see that we already have one there because we remember we saved it earlier. Let's hit overwrite. And now we've just updated that preset. And last, let's look at slow drift. So let's go through. Let's pick a brand new preset for this. Yeah, sounds like analog goodness to me. And let's turn the effects off. Here, that's doing quite a bit. And also, let's go back to our synth panel here and turn down the release time, so we can really hear the tail on those delays and reverbs. So going back, yeah, quite a lot going on with the effects already. Let's turn them all off and bring them back in one at a time again. So we have the EQ, very similar to what we saw in Faded Keys, but tuned differently for the type of sounds that Slow Drift is specializing in. Love how you can get a nice scooped sound with that so easily. The next one, distortion. This is that very similar distortion we've seen in a few other places now. And now instead of the phaser or the chorus, we've got the flanger on this. It has a bit more of a feedback kind of sound as well too with this control here, which give the sound a kind of hollow kind of resonance. And then we have a delay again, very similar to what we had in Faded Keys. And also a reverb. Big difference from where we started. Little over the top, but I like it. So that's okay. And those are the audio effects section for the state machines. All three have their own unique chain and can really provide some crazy and interesting or subtle results depending on how you use them. All right, so thanks everyone for hanging out with me for the last little while and checking out the state machines. Obviously, I'm just scratching the surface of what's capable with these, and there's so much potential still. And what I'm really excited about is seeing what everyone out there makes with them. You can go to cradle.app and download the demo. There's a 14-day demo for all three instruments. Go make something awesome with them and can't wait to hear what you do. Thanks so much. See ya.